I'm thrilled to be here. I've plugged in a little bit with Greenhouse, love what y'all do. And I wish that I had more mentorship and support in my early career. So, really happy to be here. We are going to be talking about and discussing, and not me speaking at, but hopefully interacting, engaging, and hearing from all of you, the topic of negotiation. It's something that is so powerful, so influential for mapping a career and a path for fulfilling work and, skills that also are really helpful in your professional and personal life. I am going to say that if I say anything at any point and somebody has a question, we will have time for Q&A at the end, but please stop me, raise a hand. You can come off mute. You can always drop chats to me privately if you don't want your name known, if you want to drop that anonymously. But I welcome, interaction throughout, because this is really a time for you to be learning. And I don't want to say something that doesn't make sense. And if you have a question, I'm sure others do as well. So very much a space I want you to participate and, learn alongside. So who am I? Natalie Levy. I am your speaker and presenter for this session. I have a background spanning engineering and mathematics. I worked on Wall Street in derivatives trading and prop trading, things that don't exist anymore because of, the subprime crisis and all these things that basically I did when I was in banking. But the story, or I guess the headline should be that I've negotiated basically every comp and, equity package I've ever had with employers, on the order of over 40% year over year, which is pretty, spectacular. I've also coached and worked with others. This is all content that I have learned through enterprise selling and through my own work. And it's not, I paid somebody to teach me this and I'm telling you lessons that I've heard through the grapevine. It truly is, learned in the field and developed through many, many encounters. Really excited to, present on this topic. And one of the things that I want to talk about today, and this is the quick agenda for us, is starting with your why. We'll get into that, but we're going to talk a little bit about your why, what drives me. I want you to be thinking about what drives you, especially when you're younger. The sooner you can basically pinpoint and say, and this is what I want to do, you're going to be better. You're going to find your footing. You're going to, be able to be more accomplished. So we're going to start there. Then we're going to talk about a negotiation framework that I teach, and we will give some examples around it. We're also going to uncover a little bit about equity and ownership and what that means, because that's also something that can come into play with negotiations. And finally, out the door, kind of setting you up for success, what to think about, and Q&A will close us out. So I'm going to share a little bit about my why in just a second, but if you want to mention in the chat what you're excited about today, this helps me understand the crowd. Maybe you have a job offer on the table. Maybe you're stepping into a new role, or you're leveling up, your existing comp. Maybe you are scared to talk about numbers. I welcome it all, right? What are the things that, and by the way, the biggest growth areas are the things that scare you. So don't shy away from, and don't just think about what you're good at. Feel free to drop anything in that chat. What do you want to get out of today's session? We'll give you just a second for that. You could say more money, right? Anything, truly. Love it. Okay. Advocate for yourself. Love it. Mentioning imposter syndrome. We're going to call it imposter phenomenon, because I don't want to pathologize you as the individual, and we all have it. We're going to learn how to ask for more and not offend. Negotiate higher salary, possible sabbatical, learn a critical language. Love it. Leveling up existing comp with 90-day review, raise promotion, thinking outside the box, learning how to be a better leader in my business, excited to learn how to leverage past experiences, ask for higher speaking fees and salaries. Wonderful. So we're kind of coming at this from a bunch of angles. Love it. Again, I want you to think about what's something that you're uncomfortable with. So if I touch on something and you're like, I know that, when I say practice, think about the things that maybe are a little bit tougher for you. These skill gaps in these areas where you say, wow, she said what? Think about where you can grow. So I'm just going to leave you with that as we kind of move on from here. All right. I'm going to share a little bit about me. I'm going to share a little bit about my why. And I want you to be thinking about the things that drive you. What makes you cry? What makes you want to work so hard that you don't give up? For me, I launched She's Independent, which is a women first angel group. And I'm here in Boulder, Colorado, where I run it. Because my mom, in her 60s, out of divorce, we lost her to suicide. And I'm open about this stuff because we have to be open. We have to be open to learning. I want to remind everybody you have to invest in your mental health and in your balance and things that are fulfilling to you in life. But I show up today to get women in roles of financial influence because my mom didn't have that. So many women, so many diverse individuals aren't taught the things that give you the financial influence and the footing so that you can be in those bigger, powerful roles, those boardrooms, those investor seats. The middle picture here, right? I'm wearing short shorts. I'm holding $100 bills. You can look like anything and you can be a deal maker. I have another picture up on this slide. One of my prior employers was posting something that was basically, sexual harassment on their public LinkedIn feed. And I stand up today and I advocate for those women coming next, for the woman I am, and for the things that I had to deal with. And when you really find your why, right? And mine's a really significant one. You're not going to crumble and you're going to be able to do the hard things. And you're going to be able to ask yourself, what is aligned for you and what's the role you need and what do you need in it? So just some reminders of you can take your why anywhere. And I just want to touch on some of the gaps that exist today. Because again, this is part of my why. It's for women, it's for diverse folks. Wages, we all know about it, right? 83 cents on the dollar for women for what their male counterpart earns. Worse for, women of color. The equity ownership gap. The VC funding gap, it's actually less than 2%. It went down from 3% to 2%. Less than 2% of VC funding goes to women owned. Again, women of color, far worse. So when you find your why and you say, what's the thing that drives you? How do I align to that? When you step into a negotiation, when you step into that situation, you say, I need to advocate for myself. If you know your why, and if we can get you doing this in a professional way, demonstrating your aptitude, your excellence, your competency, and if you know your why, you're truly unstoppable. So I know I'm saying a lot about this, but it's huge. And I want you to be thinking about that out of today, or maybe during today. So let's talk about the negotiation framework. You can use this with any kind of ask. And what is a negotiation? It's you choosing to step into an ask. It could be professionally, it could be personally. It could be I'm, stepping into a car lease payment. It could be I'm stepping into a rental, an apartment building. We're going to be talking about it in terms of compensation with an employer, whether it's a new role, whether it's an existing role, but you can truly use this framework anywhere. I'm going to start with information. Information, research, doing your homework. If you don't have the data, if you haven't done the legwork, you can't even start. And what do I mean by that? If I'm stepping into a new role and I say, well, I'm at the, the whim of my prior, my future employer and, the HR committee, they're going to put a number in front of you. And how do you negotiate if you don't know the market? And I will say this, and I'm going to repeat it. When they offer you money, they typically have more. When they offer you money, they typically have a bigger number they can go to. And I'm not just saying, because you know that, just ask for more. I want you to do the legwork, the digging, the research. I want you to show up in this negotiation and in this ask where you're demonstrating you did the research, you know the information. There's information asymmetry if you don't. They have more information than you. They know what they want to offer you. But if you do the digging and you talk to other recruiters, other people, that are getting job offers. If you, let's just say you're an existing company, you could talk to, colleagues, people you work with, Glassdoor, some resources that, share this kind of data online. When you do the digging, you're going to be more knowledgeable. So you can ask for something substantial, but reasonable. Because if you ask for something insane, they're not going to play with you. They're not going to actually, do the negotiation dance. Let me give you an example. I'm applying for, a role. It's, 2 years out of school and I've done the digging and I know I'm worth $85,000. Okay. And they're offering $65,000. And I go in and I say, knowing that I, need the 85,000, maybe I say, I did the homework. I see what the market comps are. I'm looking for 90. If I didn't do the homework and I said, I'm looking for 120, I need 120, that's so out of the realm of what is, the market comp. They're just, you're not going to walk in there and saying, oh, I did the homework and this is what I need. And it's a real number. You're just going for something high. But if you say, I've done the digging, this is the market, this is what I need, they're going to say, wow, look at that competency. This person did some research. They know how to present themselves. It's fair. It's within the market. And maybe they come back and say, you know what? 80 is the highest we can go. And maybe you'll take it. But do the digging to know what is the market, right? Strategy and skills. There are so many things I could say in this category. It is truly a game of poker at the end of the day for some of the negotiation. And what do I mean by that? The first number thrown out anchors or pulls to that number. So if they throw out a really low number and they say, we'll give you 60, the way to work when they throw out a low anchor is you say, listen, I've done the digging, I've done the research. Unfortunately, that's just such a low number. I can't even have that on the table for the negotiation because it really is out of the realm of what the market comps are. Get rid of the number if they throw it first and if it's too low. If you throw the number first, and again, don't be egregious, don't make it crazy high, but if you say, I've done the research, I've done the homework, I believe that, I'm worth 95 or 90, and, this is what I'm looking for, you're going to anchor to or pull to that number. So that's how you're using anchoring for you and how you can work around anchoring if it's potentially being used against you. Another one that I love, information, right? You want information. You want to be learning throughout this dance, this negotiation. And by the way, a negotiation at the end of the day, I don't want you beating somebody up and walking away and saying, I got what I got and I'm happy with it. You really want to walk away and say, I got what I wanted, but I also demonstrated to them I'm the type of employee they want to hire and they want to promote. It's not about just beating somebody up. It's saying, get what you want, but do it in a professional way, right? It's a dance. And so another strategy or skill is, how do you get information? How do you learn throughout this? If I throw out that 90,000, I've done the digging, I've done the research. I believe 90,000 is what I'm worth and what the market, is offering. Is this something you can do? Pause. Awkward silence, right? When you pause and when you create that silence, don't you want to fill it up? You want to fill it up with talking, with speaking? The first person who speaks into that open space basically loses. They're giving up information. And so if you wait the 5 seconds or the 10 seconds, it can be very awkward. They're likely going to stumble and say something and say, well, 85 was the number we had. I'll go back to the hiring manager, get more information. Make sure you're using those awkward pauses or silence to your advantage. Again, don't be using it. Don't let them use it against you. Be thoughtful. Be mindful of what are the numbers. Have you planned out, how you want this to go? All right, we have a lot to cover, so I'm going to move on from here. Mindset and confidence. This is a huge one. Practice, practice, practice. Practice in the mirror, practice to your dog, practice to your mentor, to your friend. And don't just practice anything. Do the legwork and know, what do you want to articulate? What is the thing that makes you superhuman? What's the thing that you're so good at? Why should you be in this role? Did you do the digging? Can you map yourself into that role? Can you articulate the value that you bring? Be thoughtful about it. Mindset truly is everything. Executive presence is huge. How do you show up? Executive presence, right? It's a term maybe you've heard, maybe you haven't. You want it. Put on a little bit of makeup or, lay out your outfit the night before. Go for a hike. Don't just be, figuring out what you're going to say up to the meeting. Do the legwork, get a good night of sleep. Get in the headspace, get in the mindset. Maybe take a lion's breath. Do you see how I'm up in the camera a little bit? I'm not back here kind of like, frail in a corner. Take up some space. Even if it's virtual, you can still show power through that interaction. And I want you to practice so much that no matter what happens, and even if you're so scared to talk about money, if you've practiced so much, you can still make it a flawless ask. And they won't see how nervous you are if you've practiced, if you're in that mindset. All right, quickly, I'm going to touch on equity because depending on the company that you work for or potential future employer, they may have equity at stake. And if you don't understand equity, you're not going to be able to negotiate it. You can't negotiate something you don't understand. And by the way, what is negotiable? Everything. Title, reporting lines, time off, expenses if you wanted to, do some higher education learning. You can truly ask for anything. And equity, I'm going to define it a little bit and talk about it. But if you don't know what equity is, you're not going to be able to negotiate it. So the way I'm going to define it, because we all hear about, DEI and, diversity, equity, inclusion. What is equity? In a negotiation or when you're, working with an employer and you have equity at play, it's basically them saying, here is the possibility of some company ownership. We're not just going to pay you as an employee, but you're also going to get some ownership. Not all companies do this. Private companies oftentimes will incentivize, startups will incentivize and say, here's some options for you. Public companies may do it. Maybe they're giving you RSUs, restricted stock units, or warrants, or something else. It's participation and upside. And remember what I said earlier, diverse and especially women and diverse individuals, we're not getting our share of equity. And it's not just the say, it's ownership in the business. I don't want you just to be working for the business. I also want you to be an owner in the business if that's an opportunity. It's a possible exit or possible liquidity event. It's not cash. So if they say, we're going to give you $60,000 of cash comp, $20,000 of potential bonus, and we're going to give you an equity package worth $10,000, it's not like you can go to the bank and say, I want to cash my equity package. It is possible upside in the future. The fourth point on this slide, I really want you to take it in. It's very likely much cheaper for them to give it away. So if you understand equity and ownership, and if you understand, well, these 5,000 shares that you're offering me, it's only worth $2,000 for the role that I'm stepping into. I'm really looking for $20,000 worth of, equity. It's not them saying, we're going to have to pay you another, $18,000. It's equity. And so it's much cheaper for them to say yes at the end of the day. So I want you to thinking about negotiating on all fronts, cash comp, equity comp. And options, as I was saying, that's in a private company. I'm not going to go into this in too much detail, but planting the seeds of what is equity ownership. So if you're stepping into a private company and they're offering you options, again, it is likely something you can negotiate. All different forms of instruments they may offer you for equity ownership. All right, so we have a question in the chat. After getting equity in a company like a startup, how do you negotiate liquidating the equity? It's a great question. It's not always about the negotiation there. An exit or the potential, payout on ownership, it's going to be dependent on the pathing or what happens to that company. Maybe they get acquired, so you get a payout. Maybe they're raising more capital and they might say, hey, if you have existing shares, you can sell them to the next investors. But it's typically not super liquid. And it's typically this, they come to you and say, okay, there's an opportunity, or we've sold the business. So again, potential for that, maybe jackpot or, some scenario where you get paid out. Great question. And quickly, again, to define, what is equity? I don't want you thinking if they offer you an options package, I don't want you thinking in terms of shares. I want you thinking in terms of percentage of ownership and what is it worth? Percentage of ownership and what is it worth? And just so you know, there's all these terms that happen or things that happen, kind of restrictions, where if you're stepping into an options package, they're typically going to say it's a 1-year cliff and a 4-year vesting schedule. So if you're going to leave the business before 1 year, you get nothing. 1-year cliff, meaning you only start to vest, only start to get ownership after 1 year. Again, I'm not expecting this all sinks in today. It's planting some of these seeds so that you can start to learn these concepts and things. So that if and when you get to this point of, wow, I have an equity package on the line, you can start to ask the questions. You typically, as an entry level or even a lower level employee, aren't able to negotiate a lot in terms of the equity package, in terms of the cliff and the vesting schedule. The ownership, however, the percentage, the number of shares, that is something you can negotiate on. So that's important for you to understand. When I step into a board or an advisory role, then I can negotiate accelerated vesting, accelerated, a shorter cliff. But I'm stepping in as an employee and I'm not a senior executive and I'm not, a VP level, it's a lot harder to negotiate outside of the share count and the ownership. Okay, so I'm going to gloss over this, but the idea is by stepping into equity ownership with your employer, you're essentially becoming a form of an investor. So I just want you to be thinking about influence. I want you to be thinking about, wow, even early in your career, even before you're maybe an accredited investor or ready to write a check, you can have influence. And by the way, if that company that you're working really hard for ends up having a really big payday, if you have good equity with them, you'll get paid on it. I'm not saying that happens all the time, but and I want you to get that upside. You want to get that upside. All right, so we're going to talk through a few different scenarios. The first is you have an employer that you're already working with. So it's an existing employer and you want to level up your package, your comp package. So you want to negotiate a raise. First, do I need to wait for the next, year-end review? I don't. But you want to be thoughtful. You want to be thoughtful and you want to map a path to what does success look like and who do you think is influential and what chain of command do you believe you need to follow? Do you have a champion? Or can you ask somebody who will be influential, who's seen your great work? Ask them to support you. Hey, Gary. Wow. Yeah, clearly I'm watching The Golden Bachelor. That was the first name that came to mind. I don't know if anyone else is watching it. Hey, Gary, can you support me? I'm really looking for a raise or I'd like a, title change. And you saw the work I did on that marketing project. And I was hoping that you could send a note or have a conversation with Sally to let her know that, I'm really showing up and I'm doing these great things. I just want to make sure that that's primed so that when I have the conversation with Sally, she's heard from you. Helena, are you watching The Golden Bachelor? I saw a smile there. A little bit. It's great. So, make sure you've done the homework, right? What do you need? What are you mapping to? By the way, if you're doing all this work, you don't want to get to the end goal and say, well, crap, I asked for the wrong number, or actually, this isn't the role I wanted. Do the legwork. And that includes, where is the thing that you want to end up being? What do you need? What is going to feel good for you? What is the market value? So one thing I want you to think about, and this is really applicable for any type of negotiation, is really spending time on how do you articulate not just your ask, but the value you bring. Your superpowers professionally, they're probably not the first thing that come to mind. I know that might sound odd. Ask colleagues, ask people who know you, who've worked with you, what am I really good at? Peer reviews or, supervisor reviews, if they don't do it, ask. Get feedback. And it's really hard, especially when you're younger, to take the feedback. But I guarantee you, if you can digest that feedback and you can understand what are the things that you're really good at, and maybe also understand those gaps and what you can work on, but can you articulate and understand the things you bring? And it's not always the thing you enjoy the most. It's not always the thing that you think you're best at. It's the thing that you are the best at. And by the way, if I was you, I'd be looking to say, what am I best at? And what do I really enjoy? And how do I overlap those? And if I can't, because you can't always in a professional role, you find the extracurriculars or other projects or things that are going to bring you, that joy and those things you really enjoy. But make sure you're in a role that are using your skills. If you're really, don't feel confident or comfortable with customer facing, don't be in a customer facing role. The stress, the illness, you're not going to be able to execute if that's not something that you can get comfortable and confident with. And that's okay. You could be amazing in that, product role or that, whatever customer support role that's a little bit more in the back and not necessarily in a sales role where you're getting yelled at all day, right? What is the thing that you're really good at in the thing that you want to show up and do every day? Again, where are your skills? What are you good at? When you can articulate, in some really concise, maybe 2 or 3 points, this is what, I bring. And if you've looked at ROI on a project, I mean, these are things critical to showing. Because assume that, Sally, who's my boss's boss or, the boss, if Sally's making the decision, assume she doesn't know all the data points. You have to remind, you have to pull them up. There's qualitative and quantitative. It's not just about feeling good and saying, oh, well, I believe I did well here. Well, I drove that marketing campaign and looking at our Salesforce CRM, that brought in 300,000 of potential leads and 50,000 converted. And it really shows the aptitude I have for this. And I'm looking for, a little bit more of a leadership say, and I'd really, I believe that my compensation year over year, deserves this $20,000 bump because of what I'm bringing to the table. And the more you show up and you say, I want to invest in me and I want you to invest in me. I want you to see in that negotiation that employer or that future employer wants to invest in you as well. And if they aren't, if they're completely, closed off or shut off to this or say, keep your head down, just keep working hard. That may not be the environment for you. I want to make a few points here. There were a couple of comments in the keynote that I thought were interesting, and also some comments that came out of the chat that I also thought were interesting. The first comment I'm going to make is that concept of a growth mindset. I have the book by Carol Dweck that was mentioned somewhere on my bookshelf. Great book. A growth mindset basically says, can you learn and can you evolve and can you grow? And that's based on the mindset that you have. And the growth mindset says, when you look at the data, you can get better at negotiating. So I'm going to say that again. There is proven data sets, and Carol Dweck in her growth mindset book talks about it. You can become a better negotiator, assuming you have a growth mindset, assuming you're open to learning, right? Ask for the things, learn in these negotiations. One of the comments that was made in the keynote again was learn, even if you're in a bad job or in a role that, maybe doesn't suit you. I'm not saying that you should necessarily stay there, but you can learn in that role. You can learn, even if you're negotiating, to learn and you're going to leave. There's a lot of learning opportunities, especially when we're young, especially when it's a role where you say, you know what, I may be not happy here. You can still learn in that role by asking for things, by getting feedback, by trying, new techniques around negotiating. There's so many learning environments. And when I talk to people and they say, well, I'm not sold on my current employer, but I do want to raise. We make sure that they're mapping in that path to learning when they negotiate there, while alongside they're also negotiating elsewhere. No problem. Bye, Rebecca. And so thinking about, right, how can you grow? What can you learn? These are huge. And somebody brought up a really impactful and important point, which was, maybe I'm not in a position to take risk. And it's not lost on me. Greenhouse Scholars is doing tremendous work with a lot of students who are maybe first gen going to college, maybe coming from a diverse background where you don't have the money in the bank because your parents couldn't say, oh, I'm paying for, this or that. And I want to acknowledge that, right? I want to acknowledge that we're not always in that position of, I want to take big risk up front. It doesn't have to be big risk. I do want to acknowledge that I talked the other month to, some queer folks around their investing. And they said, well, we're just told and taught we have to be so conservative and we have to save everything in the bank. I talked to a Black woman the other day. She's like literally putting her money under the mattress. Basic investing concepts like, putting money in a place where you can get interest or thinking about investing versus having it in a savings account. It was different based on being a diverse individual where you have to plan more for your safety. I want you to think though outside the box and recognize when you do take some risk, and I'm not saying, don't take the job and blow yourself up so you don't get the job, right? You need to put money, in the bank or, food on the table. But when you can take a little bit of risk to say, I think this is going to be something that's going to be rewarding. I think I can do that role, even though I don't have, 90% of the qualifications down. I think I might like this, but it's a little scary because it's trying something new. Take those risks. Take the risks of raising your hand. Take the risks of, I want to be promoted and putting, your hat in the ring. But by no means am I saying take all the risks, because it's not, we don't all have the same risk tolerance. And it's really important to say where you are, what your goals are and what you need. Put yourself first. But if you're not taking risks, you're not going to grow as much. And every time somebody says to me, oh, I think I need a change, you know what actually that means? I need a change. And they're just not admitting it fully yet. So take the calculated risks. And so just a few things I wanted to mention there. Let's talk about the next scenario, which is you are looking for a new offer. And actually, let me go back for a second. Oops. Let me go back to the first scenario. One thing that I didn't mention here, if you're with an existing employer, something you need to know, and this should really help with your mindset, if you've been performing, they do not want to lose you. They do not want to lose you. Hiring is expensive. Onboarding is expensive. You're already working out. You're already doing great things. Know that, right? That should go into that mindset and that confidence of they should be investing in you and they should be rewarding you and supporting you. Really important in terms of the mindset. Similarly, right? If you receive an offer from a new employer, they've decided they want to hire you. Asking for more money shouldn't be maybe it's scary, but it's not something that if you do it in a professional way, it's not something where they're going to say, nope, leave. Again, remind them why that you should be a good fit there. Remind them why they want to hire and work with you, right? Similarly to even the prior one. Remind them you really enjoy the company culture. You're really excited to grow there. Remind them why, you're the candidate. But with a new offer, again, you really needed to dig into what's the market. Hopefully you're talking to and you've, established that dialogue and that, price point with recruiters or, other folks that are going for similar roles or Glassdoor. But remember, everything is negotiable. So let's just say, back to our earlier conversation around asking for the 85 or 90,000. Let's just say that company said, you know what? We are a Series A funded company. We don't have a ton of money. It's a really tough environment. We'd be happy to reassess this if we close our Series B. So these are different funding rounds. These are names of funding rounds. It's how much funding they have. I don't want to just leave that. I would say, great. I respect that. I understand that. Maybe I get my equity ownership package up a little bit. I'd like to put in writing and have that as a part of the offer. I'd like a $10,000, bonus or bump in my base salary upon successful closing of your Series B. You can negotiate in anything. You can negotiate in relocation. You can negotiate in truly anything. Right? Maybe you get two offers and one offer is for 80,000. No 401k, not a great healthcare situation. They're not covering any expenses. And the offer for 70,000 is giving you a 401k match. So a retirement match up to $10,000. And they're paying for your healthcare, which is huge. But maybe you like the offer that was for 80,000, but they're not going to be able to do those things in terms of benefits. Hey, really appreciate your offer, but when I look at, the compensation I'm getting from the other employer, you are my first choice, but the other employer is basically offering $95,000 when I look at, the full benefits package. Is this something you could do? You're my first choice. I'm not taking advantage. I'm being upfront. I'm being straightforward. I know what I need, and I'm looking at the full value of that offer, not just the dollars in front of me. The last point on this slide is sleep on it. And this is really for any negotiation, but if they say, you know what, we can do it. We can meet you at 95 or not 95,000. Let's just say they come back and they say, we'll give you 90,000. You asked for 95. And again, you have to pay for your own healthcare. They're not giving you any 401k bonus match, no 401k plan. You asked for 95. They came back with 90. Don't say yes on the spot. In a negotiation, sleep on it, sleep on it, sleep on it. Because I want to make sure you're not going back on what you said. Maybe you do say yes to the 90, and the next day you're like, crap, you know what? It's not the same. I needed the 95. You don't want to go back on your word. Sleep on it. Make sure that's the thing before you say yes. Be thoughtful. All right. So we're basically closing up, but a few tips, a few things to think about. Learn by doing, right? Role playing, in the mirror, articulating your points. Forget the investing point. I should have taken that out of the slide. Learn alongside others. Again, that was for an investing presentation. Ignore it. But you can also learn alongside colleagues or other Greenhouse alum if you guys want to practice together. Make sure you're getting feedback, right? Make sure you're asking for feedback. Research getting to the appropriate ask. My favorite point on this slide, my favorite point, get to know. If you never get to know, if you never hear pushback, what did you leave on the table? If you never get to know, what did you leave on the table? And no is not the worst thing that happens. The worst thing that happens is you're so egregious, you're so out of left field, they disengage, or they think that you're, you just don't make any sense. No means they're still talking to you, right? Make it a yes. How do we make it a yes? Get creative. Know the levers. Know what you can ask for. So that's what I had for y'all today. If you want to follow me at She's Independent, we're all about investing. We're all about equity ownership. You're more than welcome to check us out. We have a lot of content, including a negotiation series that I'd be more than happy to offer for next to nothing, which already is very, very inexpensive for students. But I'm in Boulder, Colorado. It was great to attend.